Okay, we're live again. It is Tuesday, another Tuesday night talk, and got a guest I'm real excited about this evening. Before we get started, as always, I want to take the time to bring to attention, if you have not already got my book, Kiamichi Bigfoot, Investigating the Oklahoma Sasquatch. It is available on Amazon and ebook or paperback, and links are in the description below. And also my other book, The Shampe, which is a fictional book about a monster in Choctaw legend, also available in ebook or paperback. Kiamichi Bigfoot, the first one, is a documentary type book over my research into this subject over the past 20 plus years. Also, invite everybody to, if you haven't already, to like, share, and subscribe to this channel. Links are below to all these things. And I want to take time also to thank our moderator, Cashew. She does a great job of keeping us free from trolls and bots so we can enjoy our conversation. And that being said, my guest tonight is someone I haven't talked to in a long time, but I met him back a long time ago, about 20 years ago, at the very first Texas Bigfoot conference down in Jefferson, Texas in 2001. His name is Craig Woolheater, and he's got quite a resume here. He is the co-founder of the Texas Bigfoot Research Center, or the TBRC. He is the host of the Texas Bigfoot Conference down in Jefferson, Texas. And if anybody's in Jefferson, Texas this October, on October 14 and 15, they're having that down there. And I'm planning to be there, by the way. He is the owner and president of Cryptomundo, which is one of the older cryptozoological websites on the internet. He is the host and organizer of the Fouke Monster Festival in Fouke, Arkansas, and of the Bigfoot Film Festival in Marshall, Texas, and it is working on a Bigfoot museum in Jefferson, Texas. And that's quite a resume. And with that being said, I'm going to bring Craig on right now. Hello, Craig.
Hey, David, how's it going?
All right. Did I get all of that stuff right?
Yes, sir.
Great. Okay, so tell us a little bit about yourself and your involvement in the Bigfoot phenomena, or mystery, if you will. Apparently, you're quite involved, because you've got quite a resume there of involvement. You know, I had to write it all down so I wouldn't forget some of it.
Yeah, I got, I was interested as a kid. The big thing that got me started was the Lake Worth Monster. The summer, it was just, 53 years ago this month that the Lake Worth Monster was seen around Lake Worth, 20 miles from downtown Fort Worth, the summer of 1969. It was on the front page of the Fort Worth Star-Telegram, July 10th and July 11th of 1969. We're talking, 10 days before we landed on the moon for the first time. And the front page story there was about this, 7-foot tall, hair-covered monster that was seen out at the lake that summer. And, that really got me going. I was only 9 years old at the time, and had a scrapbook with weird and unusual things I'd post in it. And so I had those, front page headlines that my grandparents had saved out of the newspaper for me. And so those were, in my scrapbook. And so that was a big deal. We spent a lot of time out there at Eagle Mountain Lake, which was just separated by a dam upriver from Lake Worth. And my grandparents had a cabin cruiser boat, and we'd go out there and spend, the weekends in the summer out there anchored in the lake and swimming and stuff. So, once that story hit, it was something that kind of freaked me out as a kid, that I was, thinking about, this creature, coming upon us out there at the lake, that was just, like I said, separated by a dam. But, and then a year later, I got a copy of John Keel's book. He wrote the Mothman Prophecies, but 5 years before that, he wrote a book called Strange Creatures from Time and Space that was just weird, weird creatures from around the world at that time. Mothman being one. There was a chapter about the Mothman, but he also had what he called the Bigfoot type creatures, like in the South. He called them the abominable swamp slobs, which the acronym was ASS, ass. I still remember that from the book. And he had stories of, about, back then, Bigfoot was a relatively new term that had only been, coined in 1958. And this is in 1970. So, I mean, in the South, these things weren't, especially back then, weren't called Bigfoot or Sasquatch or anything like that. They were, the wild man of the woods, and, the hairy man, or, the boogeyman, that kind of stuff. But so that fascinated me. And then a couple years later, I saw, The Legend of Boggy Creek in the theaters, and when it was released nationally in 1973. And so those three things, over a course of 4 years, really, really, cemented my interest in the, early days of cryptozoology and Bigfoot. Um, so I didn't necessarily keep up with it after that. In my teenage years, I was a Boy Scout and went camping and camped out in East Texas, where the majority of the Bigfoot sightings in Texas are located. And, it was always something in the back of my mind, but it didn't really stick around with me until May 30th, 1994, when I was driving back to Dallas from New Orleans, had gone there for Memorial Day weekend with a bunch of friends, my youngest brother, my girlfriend at the time. And we had caravan down there with 5 cars. And, this is pre-GPS, pre-Google Maps, MapQuest, any of that stuff. So we just, laid out a roadmap and picked what looked like was going to be the best way to get there to New Orleans from the Dallas area. And so we set out from Dallas Friday morning at about 5:30. And so by the time we're in central Louisiana, it's mid-morning, and, everything is bright and sunshiny and all that. But, this was just it's Highway 71 through between like Alexandria and Baton Rouge area. And, but it's basically just a 2-lane street, state highway with just some small towns that it went through, and no major traffic or anything. Well, we didn't leave until, like I said, there was 5 cars. So we all set back to Dallas Monday at different times. And I was driving the last vehicle to leave, and we didn't leave New Orleans till about 9 o'clock. And so by the time we swing around Baton Rouge and are heading towards Alexandria, it's 11:30 at night. And this 2-lane highway is now unlit. It's desolate. There's no traffic, no nothing out there except, kind of swampy on the left-hand side and a tree line on the right-hand side. And as we're driving, my friend that rode with us was asleep in the back seat. But my girlfriend and she was in the passenger seat. And, in the headlights of my vehicle, we see an upright figure off to the right of the road. I don't know. I haven't timed it, but, I'm estimating no more than 7-8 seconds at the most that we saw it. but it was an upright figure about 7 feet tall. It was, actually moving, walking parallel to the road, covered in hair. It looked to be gray in the headlight. And, it was only about 20 feet from the edge of the road. And so, it was on her side as she was in the passenger seat, and, got a pretty good look at it as we passed it. It was actually walking parallel to the road. And as we passed it, we both just looked at each other and said, "Did you just see what I just saw?" And we agreed that we did see this object. And I asked her, "What do you think you saw?" And she said, "Well, I think I saw a Bigfoot." And I was like, "Well, we've got to stop." And she's like, blank, 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 blank. No. I had a little Isuzu Amigo, a little Jeep type deal with a soft top on it, and it was rolled up because it was nice outside. So basically an open convertible. So we didn't stop. Shortly thereafter, we pulled into a little town called Bunkie, Louisiana, that's there on Highway 71. And, it's about 11:30 on Monday night, Memorial Day, May 30th. And, there's nothing open. There's no traffic. There's nobody out. I don't even remember any porch lights being on. But so we rolled through town, and on the way out of town, it's actually a Methodist church. I went back um, in April and took some pictures of it. But we pulled in there and talked for about 10 or 15 minutes, but we had to get back on the road because my friend had to be at work that morning. And we were still, probably 5.5, 6 hours from Dallas. So we got back on the road, and we didn't really talk about it once we got on the road. We didn't talk about it once we got home. It was just something, weird that we experienced out there. And, people, probably lots of people in the chat room are going to find this wild, but, I was still 3 years from getting on the internet at the time this happened. And so in the summer of 97, when I got internet access, one of the first things I looked up was, Bigfoot research and such in Texas, and met some folks, started telling my story because I found a network of people. There wasn't a whole lot on the internet back in 1997. Certainly not compared to what there is today. I mean, there was some message boards and forums and such. And so I started talking to people and telling them what happened. And, like I said, met people, networked with people, and myself and Luke Gross decided to form a research organization. And so that we did that, and that went live on June 26th, 1999. Put up a rudimentary, old, I don't know if it was GeoCities or something, free website back in the day.
Or Angel Fire.
Angel. It was Angel Fire, actually, with some stupid, animated GIFs on there, and but people started coming to the website and reporting their sightings and wanting to get involved with what we were doing. And so they did get involved. And shortly thereafter, we had traveled up to Ohio to Don Keating's Ohio Bigfoot conference and expo, and met a lot of people up there and networked. And I started thinking about there's nothing like this in Texas. I could do this. And so that was in April of 2000. And then we went back in April of 2001. And So I started planning it in Jefferson. My folks had moved to Jefferson and bought a bed and breakfast in the late 90s. And my mom was on the events committee for the Bed and Breakfast Association. So I had some resources. So I started planning it for there, which, worked out well because, I mean, there's a long history of sightings in that area, especially in and around Caddo Lake, which is, 15 minutes from Jefferson.
Mm-hmm.
But that whole area, the Piney Woods area of East Texas, you know, there's, just a ton of sightings reported from there. So we started investigating that. And, that first year that you came to the conference, which incidentally was on September 15th, 2001, 4 days for 9/11.
Man, I didn't even think about that.
Yeah, it was 4 days
Sure,
after
right.
9/11 was that
Wow.
Tuesday, and the conference was Saturday. And we still had a pretty good turnout. I mean,
I remember.
the room was definitely full, and Lauren Coleman couldn't fly in, and Linda Moulton Howe couldn't fly in, but Dr. John Bindernagel, who didn't fly, had been on the road for a month, traveling from Vancouver Island all the way down, through British Columbia and through the Western United States, visiting witnesses that had, reported sightings, and he was following up with them, and he and his wife Joan were, camping in the back of their vehicle, and they had been on the road for like 4 weeks when 9/11 happened. So,
Wow.
they made it there, and we had a great time. I mean,
It was,
a lot of fellowship. I mean, there's nothing better, in my opinion, than being around a group of like-minded people with a common interest. And so, we did it for a number of years. We reorganized as a nonprofit in 2007. Then everything was done by committee. We started getting, people, other cities trying to get us to move the conference there. We were approached by Athens and Tyler. And the conference committee at that point decided that it would behoove our mission to move it to Tyler, a town of 100,000 people with universities there versus 2,000 people. And so it moved to Tyler in 2009, 10, and 11. Well, in 2010, I actually resigned from the organization and to focus on other things, my personal business and Cryptomundo, and turned it over to them. It was a nonprofit, so it would carry on without me because up till the nonprofit, it pretty much, fell on me, everything with the organization. Luke had left a couple years earlier, and so I left it in their hands, which at that time was the Texas Bigfoot Research Conservancy, the 501c3. They rebranded it as the North American Wood Ape Conservancy to be more scientific sounding, I guess. In 2013, that was the last conference they held. They had actually moved it to Fort Worth, to Tarrant County Convention Center, to try and build the attendance, and still it didn't. So they pretty much gave up on it. So I reorganized the original TBRC and the original conference back in Jefferson in 2014, and have held it there since 2014. In 2005, the city of Jefferson issued a town proclamation signed by the mayor that the third weekend in October in Jefferson was Texas Bigfoot Weekend, and they issued me a key to the city. In 2016, they issued a town proclamation celebrating the 15th anniversary of the conference in the 15th anniversary, yes, in 2016, that it was had been there. It was the 15th year of the conference there, and then in 2018, the mayor signed a proclamation designating Jefferson as the Bigfoot capital of Texas. Um, so in 2019, after any of the events in Falk had fallen by the wayside after 4 years, the last one being in 2015, I brought back or a new organization, the Falk Monster Festival there in Falk. The first year, we wrote a check from the proceeds for $3,000 to the Falk Independent School District as a donation from the proceeds from the event. And since then, as I do in Jefferson now, because I've been doing that in Jefferson for, I think this will be the 5th year I've done it in Jefferson, but offer scholarships to the senior students at Jefferson High School. Will be the 5th year that I've done that, and so in Falk, I awarded 8 scholarships to Falk seniors after actually right before the event in Falk last month. I'm awarding 10 scholarships to Jefferson students, seniors, for the fall semester. So some of the proceeds from our conference, from raffles and auctions and other fundraising deals that we have, go back to the community and award scholarships to the seniors there graduating in high school in both of these communities. They're both very small communities. Falk is only about 800 population there, but the scholarship is open to all students of Marion County. So it's not just Falk; it's all students in Marion County, Arkansas, that those are, and then the ones in Jefferson are open to the Jefferson High School seniors. It's the Texas Bigfoot Scholarship there and the Falk Monster Scholarship in Falk.
Okay. Now you're a resident of Jefferson, right?
As of January 1st this year.
Okay.
I am a resident of Jefferson.
Got a fella here, and everybody that wants to ask a question or whatever, please put the questions in caps. We got a good turnout in chat over here, so I'll try to get every one of them. But this is my friend Joe from the Western New York Bigfoot Investigation Group. He says, I don't like the term monster for Sasquatch. They're not monsters. So that's another thing we've talked about. What are they? That's a thing. Some people are looking for a monkey. Some people think, they're closer related to us, which I'm in that camp. I think they've got to be something closer related to us. What are your thoughts on the nature of these, Craig?
Well, in the nearly 25 years that I've been investigating, talking to people, I've talked to probably over 300 witnesses. I have never talked to a witness who claimed to have heard any kind of a language, any kind of a language any more than any other animal. I've never talked to anybody who claimed to have telepathic conversations. I've never talked to a witness that had seen one, whatever you want to call it, disappear. do like the Predator and,
So you're putting them in the flesh and blood category.
oh, I'm definitely in the flesh
Yeah.
and blood.
Okay.
I'm not
Gotcha.
claiming, I'm not claiming that that I know anything for a fact. I mean,
Well, of
like I
course.
said, I've talked to probably over 300 people, and of those, I fully believe that a percentage of them are describing something that happened to them, and with an accurate description. Because in my opinion, there's only a couple of possibilities when somebody says they've seen one of these. They could be out and out lying. They could have been hoaxed by somebody. They could have been under the influence of drugs or alcohol. They could have misidentified known wildlife or a human.
Mhm.
But other than that, you know, or they saw what they say they saw, and I feel that at least some of them fall into that last category.
The Squatch and Cowboy here, Joe Pass, wants to know, can you say when the museum is going to open? And how is the Squatch and Cowgirl doing?
Well, the Squatchin' cowgirl that he saw is no longer in my employ or involved with me, but I am. The hardest part I'm having is finding an appropriate location to put the museum.
Okay.
I'm trying to find a building, a a lease space that is of adequate size and has adequate foot traffic. And I have talked to a couple of people about locations, and one of them, there's two vacant and that are both, pretty ideal. One's larger than I need, but depending on what I could get the rent for. But I can't get a solid answer because the owner is out of town, and the other one was occupied up until May, and the guy that owns the space, his wife has claimed for years and years and years that she's wanted to put in a boutique there. So he hasn't leased it as of yet. So I'm still looking for a location. It's definitely going to happen. I don't plan to move out of Jefferson. I mean, that's where I host, a good number of my events, and certainly within an hour, less than an hour from there, all of my events that I host um, are in Jefferson or Falk or Marshall, in that area. So I don't plan, and it's the Bigfoot capital of Texas. So I mean,
Right. Right.
I'm not going anywhere. So it's just a matter of finding the ideal location and getting it going. I mean, I probably will have a gift shop that will be open as soon as I get the space. Selling Bigfoot T-shirts and stuff as I assemble the museum and display cases and footprint casts and all of the stuff like that.
Mhm.
So I'm hoping to get it nailed down by the end of the year, a location, so
Yeah.
that I can get it open by next year. So that's my goal. Um, uh, just working towards that. I've even branched out since I've moved to Jefferson. I've of course started up a bunch of additional events. I actually have an event in September with the she squatchers from up north coming down, who were originally paranormal investigators who Lauren Coleman convinced that they should get into Sasquatch research because they were an all-female team and probably would be less threatening to Bigfoot or Sasquatch, a group of females. And so they are coming down to do a Bigfoot presentation, and as well as some overnight paranormal investigations at the historic haunted Jefferson Hotel there in Jefferson, coming up September 9th and 10th. And this, like all of my events, can be found on Facebook if you just search for these events. Um, I've decided to go ahead and host a UFO convention there in Jefferson. And, it's not something that I am researching or investigating. It's something that I've always been interested in. I
Right.
mean, but I know a lot of people that are involved with that field, and our headline speaker Nick Redfern is a good friend of mine. Has spoken at my events. We were roommates for a period of over a year at one time, and so decided to put that on there because one of my goals there in Jefferson is to it's a tourism based town, is to bring tourism to town. Because that's really what the tax dollars, the hotel and motel tax is a big part of their budget there in Jefferson. So it's based on tourists coming to town because, like I said, there's only, a little over 2,000 people that live there. And, but, you know, there's generally something going every weekend. And I'm trying to continue to add to that by doing car show events and other things as well as Bigfoot and paranormal or UFO related stuff. So the UFO con should be pretty interesting coming up in November 19th, the Saturday before Thanksgiving. But we've got some speakers and everything that's going to be presented at this at least the inaugural one this year is going to be Texas-based events, Texas-based UFO crashes, Texas-based alien encounters and abductions and UFO sightings, but all based in Texas. So I think that it's going to be really interesting, including quite a few sightings, from East Texas out in the Piney Woods. So I'm hoping that draws some people. Like you said, the Jefferson Bigfoot Conference is coming up October 14th and 15th of 2022. That She Squatchers Texas experience is September 9th and 10th. The Bigfoot Film Festival is the weekend of, I think that's December 9th and 10th in Marshall, Texas. Last year, we had a good turnout for the first year. We screened 5 Bigfoot movies, including the remastered, restored Legend of Boggy Creek. We also screened Exists with the director and writer of the film, Eduardo Sanchez, who also directed the Blair Witch Project back in 1999. He was there to screen his movie Exists. He had never seen it on the big screen until that weekend last year. And, we showed Exist. We showed The Legend of Boggy Creek. We showed Hammers, Abominable Snowman of the Himalaya, starring Forrest Tucker from 1957. We showed The Creature from Black Lake and Southern Fried Bigfoot all on the big screen in this magnificent theater. And it was just phenomenal to see all these films on the big screen. Some of which had really never really even been shown on the big screen. I would dare say that, maybe it was in 1957 when it came out that, maybe that Hammer's Abominable Snowman was on the big screen. And I imagine Creature from Black Lake may have, been on the drive-in circuit.
Oh, I remember that one from when I was a kid back in the 70s. That was terrifying.
Yeah, it came out in 76, and it was also filmed right there on Caddo Lake, on the Louisiana side in Oil City, on the shores of Caddo Lake over there. And so and to see The Legend of Boggy Creek in the newly remastered and restored edition with in 4K with the sound and everything. I mean, it's just incredible because you can see detail in that film that you never could see before. We're working on that event for December. I have reached out and gotten verbal confirmation. Well, not verbal. I mean, it was in an email, but nothing's nailed down yet. But Bobcat Goldthwait is interested in coming to screen Willow Creek at the his 2013 Bigfoot movie at the event in December. So, in Jefferson, we've got Adam Davis, we've got Lauren Coleman, we've got Lyle Blackburn, Ken Gerhard, Shelley Covington, Montana, and a first for the Texas event is Sibylla Irwin, the BFRO investigator who's also the sketch artist. And you can see her work at sketchingencounters.com, where she does eyewitness sketches of Bigfoot witnesses and does a really cool job. And she's now doing YouTube videos based on that, with the witness telling their story and her eyewitness sketches of that. So, it's hopefully going to be, as always, I mean, a good event, a fun event, entertaining, interesting. Those are all the things I have in the works, as well as, like you said, the Bigfoot Museum that is going to come around at some point. I've just got to be able to find the location is the first, is the biggest stumbling block I've had. I've already got, offers from Cliff Barrickman, Jeff Meldrum, to supply Bigfoot footprint track casts and, other material from Texas researchers and all that stuff. It's just a matter of, plus my own personal, my whole apartment there in Jefferson is a Bigfoot man cave. And so a lot of that stuff is going to go into the museum as well. So really looking forward to getting that going, so I can get the stuff out of my apartment and
Right.
And get working on that.
So you've got the museum already. It's just not out where everybody can see it.
Right. Yeah.
So I want to get to a couple of questions here.
Okay.
Let's see. And this is probably to me and to you. Charlie Rooch, forgive me if I'm not saying that right. So do they have a turned up nose like a primate or a human type nose? And I'll answer what I've discovered or have been reported. Everyone that's been reported to me that the person's been close enough to see its face, nobody's reported a upturned like gorilla type nose. It's always been a hooded nose, like a lot more human like. And Joe from the New York, Western New York Bigfoot, if you look at his avatar, that drawn face of a Bigfoot is somebody's drawing of his face-to-face encounter that he had up in New York. Any different view on that than what I've been reported to me?
Well, I've talked to witnesses that have a pretty memorable one from up on the Red River. The river that separates Texas and Oklahoma.
Just south.
A guy that was hunting up there, and he heard a sound and whipped around and saw something that wasn't there before. He wasn't sure what it was. It was perfectly still. He thought at first that he had just missed, a burned out tree stump, until he pulled his rifle up to and his sight glass scope on it, and it was one of these creatures that was standing perfectly still. And he said that he felt that he, as still as it was, that he could have gotten a well-placed shot that would have taken it down right between the eyes. That's how good of a shot, he said. But he said his personal opinion was that it looked too human for him to take a chance that he could kill a person. Now, my sighting, the only sighting I've had, I did not get a good enough look to see facial details. I mean, all I saw was, a large hair-covered being on two legs with arms swinging. I didn't get to see any details of the face other than just hair. But my personal opinion, and even humans are apes, primates. All, no matter what you believe, if evolution or creation, we do have a fossil record of, more advanced primates than just, gorillas and apes. I know that there's been speculation, in the earlier days that Sasquatch was Gigantopithecus, which we only have, some teeth and a jawbone. I think things have morphed into more of even Jeff Meldrum, I think, is shying away from the Gigantopithecus.
Yeah, I mean, fossil record on that's just a big orangutan from what nothing to show it as a biped either.
And the fossil record for any of these things, I don't think that we even had a fossil record for chimpanzees until very recently. I've always heard of all these, Cro-Magnon and Neanderthal and Australopithecine and, all of these things that, the quote I've heard is that, all of those skeletons, bones, fragments, whatever, could, maybe fill the back of a pickup truck. I mean, it's not like we have just, hundreds of thousands of fossils of primitive man or whatever you want to say. Now, when people say human, to me, though, that is, to me, which I am a spiritual person. I certainly believe in a higher power. To me, human is Homo sapien, maybe Homo habilis, but, Australopithecine, those things to me are not human. And, I don't really get into this discussion to me because, it breaks down into religion, and I don't discuss religion or politics, but that's my own personal opinion. My personal opinion that it's an, as far as I know, undiscovered and uncatalogued primate that walks on two legs. That's generally as far as I'll go to say it's a primate, because like I said, even we are primates. All the apes are primates. So, I think that its intelligence is probably closer than anything else to man, at least primate wise. Now, I don't know, dolphins or anything, but I think that they are pretty darn intelligent. I feel that they, I don't buy into, dematerializing or, or stepping into a portal to another dimension. If you're a hunter, that, white-tailed deer can disappear into the woods. They have perfect camouflage for their surroundings. And I believe that these things do too. That guy that had the sighting, that could have put a bullet between its eyes. He heard another sound over his shoulder, and he looked over his shoulder to see if he could see where that was. And when he turned around, the subject that he had his scope on was gone, and he felt like that it probably dropped down into the 3 foot tall or so, 3 to 4 foot tall grass, that he didn't really feel that it had enough time. And who knows? I mean, people that have reported seeing them, run or whatever, say they run with incredible speed. So who knows? But he felt creeped out that it was in the grass, near him, and he just ditched his shit and hauled ass basically, and left his stuff there, his campsite there, and left, and didn't go back. So, like I said, my opinion is, I mean, there's weird stories out there too. I mean, there's stories that, people want to associate them with UFOs because, there was a UFO seen and a Bigfoot was in the vicinity. Well, apparently there was also a human in the vicinity because the human saw the UFO and saw the Bigfoot. So, as far as I'm concerned, what if the Bigfoot thought that the human and the UFO were associated? I mean,
Dan Gordon has looked into
oh yeah, I know the silent invasion, and I'm working on getting Stan to participate possibly by Zoom with my UFO convention in November.
Yeah, he's been
I'm a big fan of Stan's. I love Silent Invasion book. That story from '72 just creeps me out. With, the person starts barking like an animal and drops to the ground and frothing at the mouth, and Bigfoot type creatures are seen walking parallel to the fence, and where a UFO was just sighted. I mean, I don't know, I wasn't there, so I'm not gonna discount their story.
Right.
I know he got another.
That's the thing. A lot of people have these ideas, and some people I've taken reports from people that have a fairly regular, if you'll say that, Bigfoot sighting, and then something that edges on maybe paranormal. They said, I don't even know if I want to say this part of it. I said, no, tell me the whole thing. An honest investigation. We got to listen to the whole thing.
Sure.
But Western New York Joe here makes a good point here. In science, human just means being in the genus Homo. Homo erectus was human.
Right.
So was Homo neanderthalensis. And many other species were human, not just Homo sapien. And right. Craig, you and I probably have some Neanderthal DNA, being of European descent. You've seen that, right? So, I mean,
well, I did my Ancestry.com, my DNA, and I didn't get any Neanderthal DNA back in mine. But my ex-girlfriend, who I used to kid about it, had 2.9% Neanderthal.
Oh, so she was the Neanderthal in the
she was the Neanderthal in the in the
I want to bring this up back in the early days when you were one of the organizers or co-founders of the TBRC. I went on one little hike with one of your guys back in it was either 2000 or 2001, and I cannot recall his name, but he was from Sulphur, and we went on a long hike. Do you have any idea who I'm talking about?
Yeah, but his name will not be mentioned.
Okay. Anyway, I met him. I don't even, gosh, that was 20-something years ago. I don't even remember how I met that fella. But anyway, we went on a long.
Well, he lived up there in Sulphur.
Yeah, I met him there.
They were convinced that he was convinced with that. What was that guy's name? Charles. He was a doctor.
No, different guy. Not the same guy.
No. I know it's not him, but he was working with him. That supposedly would put
Snicker bars.
Yeah. No. Well, the guy that you're talking about supposedly fist bumped a juvenile Bigfoot and gave it a Snickers bar.
Now you're talking about this, and he was not a regular doctor. He was one of these homeopathic.
No. That not that guy. That guy was putting soda cups from fast food places.
So there were more doing stuff like that down there.
Yeah, this guy was a member of the group at one time, but he claimed to in the snow see and it's in Jerry Heston's book. I'm pretty sure.
I'll have to look back at that. I've got Jerry's book.
Yeah, there's mention of this up in Sulphur at that. What is that park that's in the city of Sulphur?
Well, it's just the Chickasaw National Recreation Area.
Right. Yeah. But they claimed that there was 64 individual Bigfoot roaming in that park.
Impossible.
Yeah, 64 of them.
I've been all over.
They had one of them that they called, I can't remember his name now, but they said that he had an afro, and when he stood up behind the portalet, they saw his head above the portalet, and that they felt that he was, what would be the correct term now? It would be he had.
I agree, Joe.
learning disabilities that they could tell by his head was misshapen, and he. So there wasn't a lot of credence. As a matter of fact, I told that one individual that claimed to see a mother and juvenile Bigfoot walk down the hill in the snow, where he was sitting down at the bottom of the hill, and they approached him. And I mean, this just goes against all of nature that that the juvenile Bigfoot, the mother Bigfoot let the juvenile approach him. He pulled out a king-size Snickers bar out of his pocket and tore the wrapper off and held it up in the air. And this juvenile Bigfoot gingerly walked over to him and grabbed the Snickers bar out of his hand, and then went back to the mother and ate the Snickers bar.
And nobody thought to take a picture.
Oh, well, we're getting to that part.
Oh no.
And because mother animals are so nonchalant with their young.
Oh no, I know where you're going with this. I've seen this. Go ahead.
I mean, because people get to go up and pet bear cubs all the time when the mother is there. And then the juvenile Bigfoot was looking at him and started, and he was making a point to look downward so as not to make eye contact with them. But the juvenile Bigfoot came back and he held his fist out, and the juvenile Bigfoot came over and fist bumped him, and then went back to the mother. The gentleman looked back up at the top of the hill, and now the daddy Bigfoot was at the top of the hill. And so the juvenile and the mother got up and walked up to the top of the hill, met up with the male Bigfoot, and walked off. My response was,
you actually responded.
I am sorry, sir, but that is a Kodak moment if there ever was one. And his response was, I didn't want to pull out my camera and scare it off. And I said, well, I'm sorry, but if Mother Teresa told me that story without a picture, I'd call her a mother effing liar. Point blank, that's what I said.
Well, I'm not Catholic anyway, so that's not a big deal. But no, to be fair, the gentleman that I went on that hike with does not fit that profile. He didn't. No. He did not. And I don't know if he was a long-time member or, if you will, of that or what.
He was not, because you got to remember, we only formed the organization in '99.
Yeah, so he's only a year or so old. But
So it wasn't. But
he
the
was,
individual in Sulphur is. I know who it is, and the individual in Sulphur is that story is his story.
wow.
Now, the
Well, I
other
missed
guy I'm
out on
talking
that. He
about
hadn't.
was a whatever you want to call it, homeopathic doctor or whatever.
Right. He
But he
made
was
the TV
Doctor
news.
Charles something or other,
Right.
and he had come up with a chart of finger and thumb prints, hand prints of
That's
Sasquatch
him.
that got around at the time, and Jimmy Chilcutt, who was the latent fingerprint expert for the
Mm-hmm.
Conroe Police Department and owned the largest collection of primate hand and footprints, where he went to Georgia to the facility there and personally finger, hand, foot, toe printed all of the primates there, and stated that all of those were hoaxed. Those they were like the side of your hand to
Mm-hmm.
make like a thumbprint or something, and that's um, going back over all the years I've been involved and thinking about all the people that have come and gone and been involved with my organization, and thought it was the greatest thing since sliced bread until they you know had a difference of opinion or whatever, and then it was the biggest piece of shit there ever was. And me, was the scapegoat, of course, that it was my fault. Just like Matt Moneymaker of the BFRO, the Bill Gates of my, whoever the top dog is gets the heat. And so
Sure.
I know what other individuals like Dr. Jeff Meldrum, John Green, Dr. John Bendernagel, their opinions of what my accomplishments were, what I was doing and organizing. Their opinions matter a whole lot more to me than a disgruntled ex-member. That it's just
That's
water off a duck's back. I mean,
that's going
you
to
got to have a
happen.
thick skin. You got to.
Yeah.
Um,
And I mean, that's just going to happen with anything you get into. There's going to be
sure.
people you get cross. I mean, even people you're friends with. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm a musician. I mean, you know how hard it is to keep a band together and people not get crossways.
Sure.
But the thing is, I'll tell you what, the highlight, still looking back at that Bigfoot conference, that first one, the highlight of that for me was there was a few minutes I got to sit down, just me and John Bindernagel at a table and talk for
Yep.
a while. And for gosh,
Humble.
such a humble, friendly
Yeah, because
individual.
most people like that you're talking to, you can already see that they're trying to figure out what they're going to say next, not necessarily paying attention to you. He was a very humble, very the nicest guy you could ever ask to meet, and genuinely interested in what you had to say.
Mm-hmm.
And was, he was more of a listener than a talker. He wasn't taking charge of the conversation. I mean, he wanted to take in what you had to say, what your opinions were. And, the Bigfoot world lost a huge, huge, huge person in the field when he passed away of prostate cancer back in 2018.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you one thing about him is that I got from it. He wanted to believe the best about people because he and I would talk a little bit about people hoaxing things. He did not want to think that very many people did that sort of thing, and I thought, well, that's nice of him. I want to address this. I don't know if you can see the comment there where Gaskin's 1967 says there's a lot of drama in the Bigfoot community. And I want to say this. I don't think it's as bad now as it was in those early days.
Well, the four horsemen.
I'm sorry?
The four horsemen, John Green, Renee DeHenden, Grover Krantz, and and Renee DeHenden, Grover Krantz, John Green, and Peter Byrne. They were all at odds. They worked with each other at different times, but at the end, they all hated each other.
Really?
And and people people in the Bigfoot field, this is all they really have to compare it to. The paranormal world, scientific world, the CERN scientists, the super collider, all of those different fields. Like you said, music, there's always people with egos and at odds and think they're right and the other people are wrong. It's not just the Bigfoot world. I mean, the people that are in the Bigfoot community see it because they're involved with it, but it's in every community. Look at homeowners associations. You get people that, want to be president so they can run things, and people that, don't see eye to, it's in everything.
Hey, Craig, I want to throw this at you real quick. I've got this friend of mine up on the screen there, Tanya Kordek. She owns, her and her husband Chuck have the Bigfoot Museum in Tallahena. If you ever make it up there, stop in and see that.
I wanted to go up there the day that you were there.
Yeah.
I can't remember. I had a conflict, something else going on that I couldn't go to that event, and I was sorry to miss it because I have not been up there yet. Like I said, I hadn't seen you since probably 2001.
Yeah, that's it.
I was wanting.
You know what? Neither of us have any more gray hair. We still look just as young as you did then. Actually, you saw on the Facebook I posted there the picture of me standing with Dr. Bendernagel. I'm like, who is that kid?
Yeah, you looked like you were 12.
Yeah, not far from it anyway. But no, Tanya and her husband Chuck, they are very nice people. It's worth it. It's worth stopping in for. They've got some good track casts and stuff to look at, some good books to buy, and other it's a museum / gift shop.
Yeah, and that's what I want to get going in Jefferson, being since it's the the Bigfoot capital of Texas. You need to pick. I don't know, Honubi. I don't know, and get the mayor to sign a proclamation and make Honubi Ada, the Bigfoot capital of Oklahoma.
Well, we had and this I didn't even know about this till it happened. And I'm right here in the middle of Ada. Evans Bailey, who is part of a Bigfoot group up around Oklahoma City, I guess he's got a relative in the Ada Library, and last fall had was it fall or summer? Anyway, it was last year. A Bigfoot thing there, and invited me to come and talk at it and sign a book or two, and I did. It was kind of fun. So right there in Ada, and we had a pretty good turnout for that. They're talking about doing it again.
Yeah.
And it looks like I'm also going to be in October 29. They're having some kind of paranormal / Bigfoot convention thing at the Oklahoma City Library, and I've been asked to come up there and talk a little bit and do a book signing there. As it gets closer, I'll be posting this stuff. But yeah, another highlight there, Craig, was getting to meet Smokey Crabtree and his wife and all of that.
He was definitely a character, and that ain't no lie.
He was a very friendly guy too. I'm going to post a picture of us there because my kids are there, and they're all grown up now, and they were just little bitty like that. So is the new conference in the same place it was then in Jefferson, or is it different location?
No. We've moved around. We are in a building that that first one you were at was in the fellowship hall of the Methodist Church.
Yeah.
And we were with 150 people in there, we were pretty packed. We moved in 2004, we moved to the high school, the auditorium. And then, like I said, we moved it to Tyler, had it in the Caldwell Auditorium that seats 1,800 people. So even, 400 people there spread out looked like it was empty. But we have it in the Jefferson Tourism Building there across the railroad tracks downtown Jefferson. It's down the railroad, the train deal is down there where we're at, and the capacity is like 360 there, and we generally sell it out every year. So I always tell people, if you want to go, I advise you to pre-register, because we don't have, the only way we have tickets at the door is if it doesn't sell out beforehand.
Mhm.
So I mean,
well, hey, put me down for a table there, since my wife,
okay.
my wife doesn't care anything about Bigfoot. And I was thinking, well, I'm not going to drive 3 hours by myself. And I mentioned it to her over the weekend. She goes, oh, I would like to go. So,
well, there's lots of antique stores, and
yeah, she'll love that
there in town.
So it's a touristy kind of town. So there'll be something for her too. We're going to make a 2 or 3 day thing out of it.
Very cool. It's a cool town with a lot of stuff to do, and it's a small touristy town. There's a lot of stuff. Cattle Lake State Park is 15 minutes away. Cattle Lake is 15 minutes away. Texarkana is less than an hour away. Falk is only about 52 minutes away. If you want to run up to Falk and go to the Monster Mart, there's lots to see and do. There's bayou and swamp tours there on the lake and on the bayou, and there's a drive-through safari there in Jefferson.
Yeah.
There's all kinds of stuff to do, and all kinds of restaurants, from very reasonable restaurants to 5-star restaurants there in town.
Well, hey, Chris Kimball here said, I agree with Dave. The drama is nothing like it was 20 years ago. And Chris, I don't know if that has to do with just the age I'm at now. I mean, people that want to be difficult, I just avoid them. I don't have time to mess with them, where, back then I might want to stick around and argue or whatever. Now it's like, whatever. I'm in my 50s now, and I'm totally comfortable with the fact that not everybody may think like I do, and that's perfectly all right.
Right.
But it just seems like back then you had all these different, and I've got my thoughts on it. Like, the BFRO were pretty much the big guys at the time. They had this like huge database. You had who's that bunch that was down in Louisiana? Anyway, there were a lot of them, and they wouldn't talk to each other about any findings and stuff. It was
the GCBRO.
Probably. I mean, there were so many different organizations like that, had their websites. No one talked to each other, shared information. Yeah. If they talked at all, it was bad about each other, which is just horrible. And I think part of it, and you tell me if you agree with this, Craig, in the late 90s, this seems like there was such an influx of Bigfoot sightings, and plus the internet being new and these reports flooding in. My impression is maybe like the BFRO, like you said, GCBRO, or whoever else really thought they were on the edge of becoming the first to actually prove the existence of these. Might have been why they were so zealous of guarding their information.
Sure. And
is that accurate, or do you think it may be different?
I think that every one of those organizations wants to be the one to prove it to science, to put one on a slab, to say we're the ones that proved it. It's let me PG this. It's a
thank you. I'll try to keep it family friendly on here, so I appreciate it.
It's a manhood measuring contest.
Oh,
I'll go there. That they want to be the ones to beat their chest and say, we're the ones who proved it. And that was, as soon as I left the organization back in 2010, they, I was still tried to get along with the GCBRO, but they were, definitely pro-kill, and the TBRC was, not. no kill.
Right.
And we had a long-term camera study project. I mean, we had our camera study project was, we actually had permission from governmental agencies. This has now not really ever been, widely publicized, but, we had a camera study project in the Big Thicket. Well, the Big Thicket is
Yeah.
managed by the National Park Service. And to do that project in the Big Thicket, we actually had to apply for and get approved for a permit for a camera trap study for
Really?
Bigfoot from the National Park Service.
So what does that tell you?
Well, we had to write an annual report and turn over copies of every photo that our game cameras got, and there was never anything that was, well, I'm not going to say there was never anything that was ambiguous, but there was never anything that was clearly a Sasquatch.
Mm-hmm.
But they wanted copies of all the pictures that we got. We, supplied an annual report of our missions. We worked, Area X, the infamous Area X was.
Been there.
Um,
Hey, I want to tell you something. I was the first Bigfoot guy to go into Area X.
Okay.
Everybody that went in there was, I think the second person was Alton Higgins.
Yeah, Alton Higgins.
I was there first. and I'd asked somebody in that area, I said, hey, where would you go? And it's not Area X. I mean, it's a wildlife preserve.
Yeah.
That's just what we call it.
It's Nature Conservancy. It's a Nature Conservancy property. But, we had permission from that governmental agency. We had permission from the U.S. Forest Service for a short time to have a camera trap study in the Sam Houston National Forest.
Oh,
wow. We also worked with Texas Parks and Wildlife not only were we using camera traps up there in southeast Oklahoma, but we also had hair snares. Now, granted, every hair snare that we had a camera on, was bear hair. But Texas Parks and Wildlife, we were supplying the hairs that we compiled in those hair snares, turned them over to Texas Parks and Wildlife for them to do DNA, because they were trying to determine where the bears in East Texas were repopulating from.
Oh, so you were helping them out.
So we were working with Texas Parks and Wildlife. So, I mean, people can say what they want about, because we used to get, wow, what a waste of tax dollars or whatever. And we were self-funded, but we did work, under the permission of government agencies. And, to me, that says something, that they didn't just laugh it off to start with, just like, you want to try and get film or photos of Bigfoot? Right. No, I mean, they issued us a permit to do that. At first it was annual, and then they changed it, I think, to every 6 months. But that was like 5 years that was taking place. A major Texas state university, well, I don't know. It's a major university in Texas was funding, channeling some funds through, into our camera trap project to purchase equipment to, for this study. So, I mean, it wasn't just a fly by night deal. I mean, we had a lot of, and basically once Luke left, I mean, it was me running the show, and I'm not, and never claimed to be, purported to be an outdoorsman, a hunter, anything. I mean, my skill was in organization and building a team of members who had all of these other skills that I did not have, that were part of what made our team strong, because we had many, many members that had strengths in different areas, from trackers to outdoorsmen to doctors to trauma surgeons, even to pilots, ex-military, all different facets of life with different strengths to put together a strong team because, you know, it you know, it, for people and people like, well, there's so many trail cameras out there. Why isn't there pictures of Bigfoot? And there may be. I mean, who knows? Somebody that's out there that's gotten a clear picture of a Bigfoot on a trail camera may not want to show it to anybody or come forward. I mean,
Well,
there's a lot of stigma attached to being public and saying you've seen one of these creatures, from being called crazy to laughed at to being shunned by family members, friends, coworkers. Um, I've talked to many witnesses, grown men that have broken down crying on the phone talking to me because they've never had anybody they felt they could tell their story to. And it's it's certainly going back to what I was interested in as a kid has put me on this path that that this is a big part of my life. I mean, I'm basically retired. I'm retired now, living in Jefferson and just organizing and hosting events there. Typically Bigfoot or some kind of cryptozoology or something related event to bring tourism to town and to put on a fun, interesting event.
okay. So I gotta ask you this because you said the TBRC or whatever, it kind of morphed into NAWAC or something like that.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And tell me if I'm wrong here, but my understanding is NAWAC have the intention of killing one of these things?
Oh yeah. I mean, that's why I distanced myself from them is, in my opinion, actually shooting and killing a specimen is pro kill. Their official stance was pro science. Science demands
Dead is
a body.
dead.
Science demands a specimen. At the time, way back in the early 2000s, the guy's name was Dwayne Schlitter, and he was in charge of the rare and endangered species for Texas Parks and Wildlife. And he claimed publicly in an interview that if we could provide photographic or video evidence that there was a solid chain of command that they could verify that was untampered, that would go a long ways towards determining whether this was a species or not. Like I said, he's the guy in charge of the rare and endangered species in Texas. So, that was my goal, to try and gain credible photographic or video evidence. And, in the 4 years that our camera trap project was going, when I was still involved with the organization, we were not successful. But, you got to figure, I think we had a maximum of about 60 cameras out in what we felt were ideal locations. And those cameras, even at the time, we were using like $600 Cuddybacks, which were top of the line back then. Because a lot of people were using like, $49 specials from Bass Pro or Walmart. But, like people saying that, why aren't there pictures? You got to imagine that, these trail cameras have a field of vision generally about 30 to 40% field of vision and about out to about 35 feet. So if you imagine just in Texas, Oklahoma, Arkansas, and Louisiana, I believe there's like 100 million square acres of forest land in that 4-state area. Imagine how many trail cameras it would take to have coverage, blanket coverage of that. I mean, it's impossible, because my personal opinion is that these, there's varying guesstimates of population numbers. I'm on the lower end of what I believe is a tenable population in North America. Certainly, in my opinion, probably under 8,000 in North America. So if you started spreading those out amongst, North America, United States and Canada, they're going to be pretty sparse. They probably live in family groups. You figure that there's, I forget what the number of black bear in North America is, but I mean, it's phenomenal numbers compared to what that estimate is for Sasquatch numbers. I mean, even mountain lions, I think that it's estimated, 40,000 perhaps in North America. So when you figure in, a much more intelligent creature, in my opinion, only one for every 5 or less, a half of one for every 5 mountain lions. I mean, mountain lions aren't just seen every day. And you certainly don't find their remains in the wild every day.
Right.
Well,
they may bury their dead or dispose of their dead.
They may be, they may be cannibals. They may, like you said, they may bury their dead. Even large animals, why you don't find them naturally death occurring is when large animals get sick, they generally go find a place to hole up, where they're not going to be vulnerable to predators, and, probably die secluded in a hidden spot.
Strange man here. I think he has a question about how you come up with the math. There says you say there are 8,000 estimate Sasquatch in the population. How many have you seen in different? I think what he's asking, if I'm getting this right, is there a formula you kind of use?
I'm just basing it off of what other people have said, and going towards the low end. I think Jeff Meldrum has said 2,000 to 6,000. I know other people have said much higher, but I think that if they were, I've heard estimates as high as 100,000 in North America, and I just think that's way too high. That if there were 100,000 of them, they would be all over the place, probably. Right. I mean, that's 2.5 times the amount of mountain lions in North America. That's probably on par or pretty close to black bears. I just don't think there's that many. I think that they live in family units, that they probably don't have, like a big herd of them, like you see of, whatever animals you might see, certainly in Africa, like antelopes and whatever. I mean, I just feel that they live in small family units.
Well, I think they are units that are highly nomadic, because just from resources, and you know how it is. I mean, if you got a large number of animals staying in one
sure,
area, they're going to leave a lot more. I'm being put on the spot here. Wait a minute. And this is, give a shout out to, this is my friend Will Starr from up in Ohio. Says, Dave, how many of them do you think there are in all of North America? Will, honestly, I don't know. I don't think I couldn't put a number on it and do anything that's even a what I'd consider a reliable guess. I don't know. I'm not going to guess. There are people like Craig was mentioning, like Jeff Meldrum and stuff, that have tried to give some estimates and such, but I don't know. I think they're a fairly rare creature anyway, or we'd see a lot more of them. But
well, and people always say, well, if they're real and they're out there, why doesn't anybody see them? And it's like, well, people do see them. I mean, there's reported sightings all the time.
But they generally, like if you had, like say, area that I investigated, there was a lot of traffic there because the gentleman had children and stuff that these things were coming up and watching them play and stuff. I found a lot of evidence on his place as far as I found footprints of 3 different sized individuals and things like that. But I think I got the impression that where he lived was kind of a crossroads because you had the Kiamichi Mountains just north of him, and then it went down into the, northern Texas area there. And there were another group of people that were doing investigating there close to him that had seen them as well. So, but I just got the impression they were kind of going from north to south and back, just because on that acreage, if they were there all the time, they would have left a lot more evidence.
Well, my opinion is that they probably have a pretty good size home range. Like I said, that's why I think they live in, small groups, but their home range may be, 100 square miles. That they, follow the food sources, when the berries are ripe or when there's, livestock or, whatever, that I think they're opportunistic feeders that they're probably not real picky.
I don't think we're on the menu.
Yeah.
It's like I've told people, if Bigfoot are out to get us, they're just not very good at it. Here's a Filthy Cashful says he thinks 8,000 is a bit on the low side, maybe a bit more like in the 10,000s. And, and keep in mind, guys, these are just, we're just throwing our opinions around.
These are not based on surveys by Fish and Wildlife that have gone and counted the number of tracks or the number of fecal droppings or been able to see the animals or whatever and estimate their population based on that. This is it's just, I mean, spitballing. Like I said, the reason I started a Bigfoot research organization was not because I was a seasoned outdoorsman or a hunter or whatever. It was, I was a city slicker who, had an encounter I could not explain. And I just wanted to try and find some answers. And I don't know that I really ever did get any answers. I probably ended up with more questions than answers.
Hey, do you know the answer to this? This guy says, David Weather says, does the GCBFRO still try to kill these things? I don't even know if they're still around, Craig.
Their website is still up, but one of their big things was Jim Lansdale had some family property. I believe it was 16 or 1,800 acres in the Logansport, Louisiana area that they called Monster Central, and that's where they did almost all of their stuff as far as their hunts or whatever. And I think that ended up getting sold off, parted out, sold off, that big piece of property. And I don't know that is still a big part of what they do. I know that, they still do get reports reported to them and put them up on their website. I'm pretty sure. Now, I haven't gone and looked at their website in a long time, so I don't know if there are recent reports still going up on there or not.
Yeah, well, just to be clear myself, I am definitely no kill except in a self-defense situation.
Sure.
Because that does get brought up, and I try to be very clear on that. And I've used the comment before that if I was ever out in the woods with somebody and one of these things were off and they were getting ready to shoot one, I would mess up their shot.
Yeah.
Because that would just, I mean, what if they do turn out to be some type of a human type thing? I mean, would, that,
Right.
that,
I
that
mean,
would make it worse,
if I were to encounter, if a hunter called me and said, "Hey, you're not going to believe this, but I mistook this for, whatever," and dropped it, I mean, I'd be more than happy to go out there and check it out. Or if
yeah,
had roadkill reported to me or whatever. But I'm certainly not going to be the one to pull a trigger. I'm not going to be the one that's going to be involved with people that would pull the trigger to take a specimen. I mean, if you could tell me that you could look into the eyes of a gorilla, a chimpanzee, an orangutan, and you could pull a trigger and put a bullet between its eyes. Now, people are going to say, well, that's different. I mean, those are already discovered. Those bodies have already been drug in. But, like I said, you don't know the intelligence. Could you shoot a dolphin between the eyes? I mean,
Craig, I don't kill anything.
Yeah.
Except a fish when I'm going to eat it.
I thought that, hunters are supposed to, don't shoot anything you're not going to eat, or to identify your kill. And, if you don't know what it is, then you haven't identified it, in my opinion.
The reason David Perkins makes a good point here, and this is another one of my friends here close by, says the reasoning for killing one to prove its existence seems like flawed thinking, in my opinion, and me as well, David.
I mean, there's that indigenous tribes in the Amazon, would you go and shoot one of them to prove that, that they really live there? I mean, I could not justify it myself.
Yeah. And I don't want anybody to get me wrong. I'm not anti-hunting at all. I mean, that's hunting for food or something. Yeah, we're part of the food chain, and I'm not anti-hunting. No, I would not hunt anything just for the joy of watching something die. Ever. But if I'm hungry and eat food, absolutely.
Trophy hunting versus game hunting to provide food is a totally different thing. I mean, if you're only hunting to be able to mount something's head up on your wall, that's pretty egotistical, in my opinion.
Yeah. Well, Chris, you make a good point. I do draw the line and exterminate mosquitoes and roaches.
Oh, and houseflies. Houseflies.
Oh my goodness, that is a good point. Anyway, hey man, we've been on here a little over an hour and a half. I want to kind of cut us off a little bit and open it up. Does anybody have any questions for Craig before we need to go on? And I want to say this before I'm about to start writing my second book. I've got an outline and what I want in it. I've got some interviews lined up that I want to do. Tanya, if you're still on there listening, I want to talk to you about your sighting in the Bigfoot Museum. They're like my other book, Kiamichi Bigfoot. I have a channel or one chapter in there dedicated to other sightings. If you have any sightings that you would like to be considered for that chapter, or if you just have a sighting or encounter you would like to report to me that you don't want used in that, send it to me in an email at bigfootandmore@yahoo.com. If you'd like it to be considered for the book, let me know. If not, I'll just put it away in my database of sightings. But I am very interested in hearing from you about your encounters of a Bigfoot. I've been collecting these for a very long time. Craig, I think you and I actually got into the active investigation of this stuff about the same time.
Well, I remember coming across you. What year did Bigfootville come out?
Oh, well, that was later. I'd already been in it a while, but Bigfootville.
Was that like 02, 03?
Okay, we did the filming in November of 2001. It did not
Okay.
air until 2003.
Okay.
And so, yeah, so 2000, what month? September 2001 was so
Yeah.
actually we went out and did the filming after
Yeah.
uh,
After the first
the
conference.
after that first conference. Everything was such a whirlwind right then. It seemed like had
Yeah.
little kids and Bigfoot stuff going on, and then I honestly I don't even remember how I found out about the Bigfoot conference in Jefferson, but I'm glad I
Yeah.
didn't went.
It may have been those days been on MySpace. I don't remember.
Oh my goodness! But yeah, I remember those old the old website there with the just there was no videos. It was just people. And I had my
Oh yeah.
website called southernbigfoot.com. And man, I had tons of sightings on that. That's how the producer from Travel Channel got a hold of me. Was he emailed me through that website? And I thought it was just a joke until I checked it out. But okay, here's a question here for you, Craig. What has been the most memorable account in your Bigfoot years?
That I have talked to the witnesses about, probably. Well, there's been a lot of memorable ones. I mean, one that comes to mind is one that was in was it? I believe it was in Virginia that got reported to us. The guy was a preacher, and he reported that one night he and his wife were out leaving, driving in his pickup truck when something stepped out of the woods on the side of the road and walked across the road right in front of them. As a matter of fact, he had to slam on the brakes to keep from hitting it. It was that close to him, and he said that they just couldn't believe it. But the biggest thing to him was that he eventually sold that pickup truck, but he regretted it because he said that Bigfoot had touched his pickup. It had walked so close that its hand had drug across the hood of his truck. It was that close to him, and he regretted selling that pickup because Bigfoot had touched it. There was another pretty famous, this one got a lot of publicity, from Panola County, Texas, the hog hunter guy, a guy that was in a tree stand and hunting hogs and saw some hogs, heard something weird. Actually, a Bigfoot that was kind of like leaping from tree to tree, and came upon and grabbed this hog and picked it up and slammed it up against the tree, killing it. It then picked up the hog carcass and, in his words, threw it up over its shoulder while he was watching this. And as it started to walk off, I mean, he was scared because he just saw this thing grab this large hog and pick it up and slam it and kill it. It looked back over its shoulder directly at him, he said, and it let out this unearthly cry as it was looking at him. And he said that he was so scared that it wasn't even funny, that that this happened in the early morning hours, that he waited until mid-morning to come down out of his tree stand to make sure that this thing wasn't anywhere near. Had another one up not far from Falk, a guy that was a bow hunter that was in a tree stand. This one was recreated on, I think, the Swamp Stalker episode of, what was that show that was on the History Channel that Doug Hychek did? I can't even think of the name of it. But the It was on the History Channel. It was this Swamp Stalker episode that we filmed up in northeast Oklahoma, and then down in southeast Oklahoma and northwest Louisiana, Arkansas, southwest Arkansas, in that four-state corner, basically. But that he had seen shadows creeping up on him, and he actually thought that it was a cow. Saw this large dark object underneath his tree stand. That in very, very, very early morning low light, until it actually stood up, he was fully camoed out, and he had, a hunting arrow on the bow, rocked, ready to go. And this thing reached up and saw the reflection off the broadhead and actually reached up to touch it. And, he's got this bow in his hand, and this thing reaches up above its head to grab that shiny object, and it cut its fingers on the broadhead. And he said it just let out an unearthly scream, basically in his face. Well, if you can imagine, it's close enough to touch an arrow that he had on his bow. That's pretty close. And, that one, like I said, was recreated on, what was that? What was that show? Anybody in the chat? Monster Quest. You're right. Monster Quest. It was a Swamp Stalker episode of Monster Quest that reenacted that, with, digital image of a Bigfoot, and did a reenactment of that. But, those three really stand out in my mind just because of, how creepy, to me they are. I mean, not the preacher. The preacher was cool because he regretted, this was a preacher, he regretted selling his pickup truck because Bigfoot touched it.
Right.
But the other two bow hunters, were scared, to death.
Well, yeah, just the raw power
that close
like that would have
to something that, certainly could have done serious bodily harm to them if it had wanted to. I mean, like you said, I think that Bigfoot, if they were going to hurt us, they certainly could. They could certainly end us, I'm sure, with the body mass and strength that they've got to have. But it seems like, it's mostly intimidation tactics to get us out of their area. I mean, there seem to be, it's almost like a catch-22, very wary of man, but also very curious about what we're doing.
Yeah.
They try, I feel that most Bigfoot sightings are an accident on their part, that they were caught unaware, but they also come up close to rural houses. And, you hear stories of a woman doing dishes at 10 o'clock at night and, looks out the kitchen window and sees a large, hairy face peering back in at her. That they seem to come around homes, campsites. I know a guy, as a matter of fact, I just looked him up, and he just, an older guy passed away last December that I sorry that I didn't try and contact him sooner, but when he was in college at Stephen F. Austin, he was out with a professor and about 10 students, and they had one that actually came into their campsite in the middle of the night, woke them up. The professor actually cast the tracks, and they reported it to, I'm trying to think what forest or whatever that would have been. I think it was in Angelina National Forest, actually. And they reported it to the park rangers, and the park rangers came out and checked it out.
Wow.
I mean, that guy was as straight as an arrow. I I don't think that he was telling a story. And then I go back to also, I'm personal friends with Bob Gimlin. I've known Bob for about 20 years. I've heard him recount his story time after time after time, and it doesn't vary. It doesn't, even though he is,
90?
he's got to be 90 now. Um, his birthday was, when was it? It's October 18th. It was only 2 days before they got the film, but I'm trying to think what year. I think it was 1931. So he would be this year. He would be 91 years old this
Wow.
October.
Oh, I knew he was right at the 90.
And my personal opinion, he's as straight as an arrow. He is a cowboy. I would not put it past him being able to still kick any of our asses, because I tell you what, he's solid muscle, solid. When I first met him in 2003, which was 19 years ago, so he would have been 72. When he shook my hand, he could have cracked walnuts with his handshake.
Yeah.
And I just believe that, my opinion of the Patterson film is that it's a real live creature, and that it was not hoaxed. I know, I think about 4 different guys have claimed they wore the suit over the years. And, um, I don't think any of them are telling the truth. Even the last one, Bob Hieronymus, who had 2 different stories, that it was a costume maker's costume, and that it was also, a red horsehide suit. So, I mean, he told contradicting stories himself, and he's the one who claims he wore the suit. So, I mean,
Yeah.
I think the film is real, but even if the film was proved to not be a hoax, that just doesn't discount all the other things that have happened, and
No, no,
all
not
the
at
other
all.
sightings and track finds. Because to me, my father was a physics professor, and while he was a man who, demanded evidence, um, he supported what I did. He came to my conference. He helped out with my conferences over the years before he passed away. And, he was open to the possibility. I mean, that's
Mhm.
the whole thing with science. Science is so, science is supposed to be based on, discovering things. And scientists, for the most part, are so set in their ways that they don't aren't open to the possibility. You know, even the possibility. I mean, I back in the early days, I found a list of primatologists in the state of Texas, and I emailed like 60 something people, and I only got one response, and that was a gentleman who responded back that he felt that Sasquatch reports were sightings of a rare and undiscovered bipedal bear.
Hmm.
And, my question to that was, as a scientist, doesn't that pique your curiosity to want to try and get to the bottom of a rare and undiscovered by science bipedal bear in the state of Texas? Wouldn't you be interested in looking into that? And
Yeah,
never got a response again.
that would be something. Craig, I have got to get out of here. We've
Okay.
this has been a good interview. We've been going like 2 hours.
Well,
So
my phone's almost dead too.
okay. Well, hey, man, I appreciate it,
Hey,
Craig. It's this has been catching up, a lot of catching up for me and Craig. We hadn't spoke for not because we was mad at each other or anything, just we haven't, I guess, had any reason to basically. But
well, you know, before I ran across you on Facebook, I kind of lost track of you.
yeah, well, I've been doing my own thing,
Yeah.
and I've got a lot of interesting stories and stuff as well. I get down to Jefferson, maybe we can chat a little bit. And
I would definitely be interested in talking to you, for in the future to come and give a presentation if you'd be interested in the future. I mean, I've already got, this year's schedule has been lined out for quite some time.
Okay. Well, if you have a cancellation of anybody, I mean, I'm planning on coming down anyway to try to sell some books and all of that, and just kind of mingle with folks. And
sure.
But yeah,
well, like I said,
you can holler at me, and might do something there too.
Well, it's been good talking to you, and I hope everybody enjoyed the show. I'm not, I'm more of an organizational guy. I always really was. I mean, so I'm not really active in field research anymore. I still get reports, but I send those out to associates of mine, people that I trust that are investigators and researchers that, I have a network of people that live in areas where people are reporting these sightings, and I send them out. I mean, just real quick, another interesting story was at the 2020 conference, right about a week before the conference, we had gotten a report of Sasquatch activity in East Texas, and we actually pulled a glass pane of glass that had what was purported to be a Sasquatch face print on it at about 7 feet off the ground. We had that on display at the 2020 Texas Bigfoot Conference. Cliff Barrickman and Shelley Covington, Montana, actually pulled the face print off of the glass and then DNA swabbed what was left on the glass. And that DNA sample is, as far as I know, is still planning to be part of Doug Hychek's new documentary he's working on, Sasquatch Legend of Science Part 2. But the DNA testing results of that sample, purported greasy face print, are going to be revealed in that documentary that he's just getting started on. So
wow,
that was a cool story. We had interview with the witnesses on video. We actually had we showed the video, talked about it, and then after we all talked about it, we just said, oh, and by the way, we actually have the pane of glass in the room behind us, so file through here, a table at a time, and you can actually look at this face print on the piece of glass. So, you could distinctly make out a nose and a brow ridge on this thing. I know that's after the fact, but that's a pretty cool story as well. So we're still waiting to get the results of that.
Well, we might have to make a second show sometime.
No problem. Yeah. I don't do very many of these anymore. It's really got to be somebody that's a friend that I like a lot to come on and do one of these.
Well, I just threw it out there, when we
sure. And
contact on Facebook. I'm like, all I can say is no, I don't do those.
Well, I didn't mind saying yes and coming on and doing yours. I mean, you're an old friend. We hadn't talked in a while, so we're doing a lot of catching up here on the podcast too.
Yeah, for sure. Well, hey, Craig, I look forward to seeing you in October and all of that. So,
well, you'll have to definitely bring up your appearance on future podcasts where you can tell people where they can come out and meet you and talk to you and shake your hand.
Yeah, absolutely.
And get a signed book from you.
And everybody that's in chat, thank you for taking part. Craig, I have been so fortunate. My chats have not been hateful or anything. Everybody's been, in all of my podcasts, it's been very productive chats. We have not had any of the drama and all that. It's been honest opinions and
no trolls.
Talking, it's no trolls. And a lot of that, I got absolutely wonderful moderator, Cashew Gesundheit. If you look at many of these podcasts, you'll see her name pop up. But she told me the other day, she said, David, you just don't have any trolls. So,
well, that's a good thing.
I feel really good about that. So that's you guys in chat. I appreciate all of you. Craig, I appreciate you coming on. And that's it for tonight. Everyone, have a good, safe night, and see you next Tuesday. I don't have a guest lined up for next week, but I will get someone. So that being said, good night, everyone, and thanks for stopping by.
Thanks for having me on, David.
You bet. Thanks for coming.
Okay, take care.